Assalamu alaikum, family. You're tuned into the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks, and I am your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. And today we're going to continue with part 2 of our masterclass study on the deal between Jay-Z and Target. Look, we builders, thinkers, and intellectuals around here. It's not just about an emotional reaction for us, although we got the right to have an emotional reaction if we want to. And many of us may or may not change our opinion. But the beautiful thing is we just diving into the business. All right. So be a friend, tell a friend, and we'll be back after a few short commercials.
O Allah, guide me among those whom Thou hast guided aright, and preserve me among those whom Thou hast preserved, and befriend me among those whom Thou hast befriended. Bless me in whatsoever Thou dost grant me, and deliver me from the evil of what Thou hast judged. Surely Thou judgest, and none can judge against Thee. And he whom Thou befriendest is not disgraced. Blessed art Thou, O Lord, and exalted be Thee above what they set up besides Thee. I bear witness, nothing deserves to be served besides Thee. And I bear witness that Muhammad is Thy servant and apostle. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, family. You're tuned into the Sajdah Morning Coffee Talks, and I am your host, Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. Welcome to part 2 of our discussion, our masterclass on the Jay-Z Target deal. If you missed yesterday, where we went over what happened, we went over stakeholders, we went over some of the basics of the strategy, you got to go back and check it out. And I'll try to post some clips starting today, just so you can kind of get the gist of what we're talking about. But our goal here on the show is to have more than just an emotional reaction, okay? More than just, oh, no, he didn't, which I think we're still like, oh, no, he didn't. But understanding, our goal is to understand the components of the deal, because so many of us are stuck at the same level when it comes to business. That's why certain things go viral, because everybody's kind of on the same level. And a lot of us don't like to hear that because we've done good. We got a little change in our pocket. We've been successful in certain areas, but we don't realize that we don't know enough components of business to take us to that next level. Always remember this. And this is something that I'm working on in my own personal life right now. Whatever it took me, whatever I did, whatever behavioral patterns, whatever I had to do to get to a certain level, I got to do something different to get to another level. It's not going to be the same thing. Okay. So let me put my phone on silent here, and we're going to dive right into it. Many of you know that Jay-Z and Target announced an exclusive partnership to introduce on June 26, 2006. So 62626. They're planning to release a exclusive edition of Jay-Z's first album, Reasonable Doubt. It's a white album with bonus features and a bunch of stuff like that. And a lot of the community has been like, what? In the face of what we're going through with the boycotts of Target, how could you be that abusive? How could you be that blatant? And then there's people on the other side going, well, he can do what he want to do. This is just business strategy. Same type of thing that happened with the NFL deal. And so what we're doing on this show is we're going to have a master class about the deal. Okay. I personally think that the timing of it and the optics are bad for Jay-Z. I personally think that it's actually abusive. And I personally think that we incorrectly assume that we are either one of Jay-Z's stakeholders, or that in the stakeholder mix, we hold a larger piece of the pie. And I think it just might be that we're not that big of a stakeholder. Okay. But we're going to dive right back in. I don't want to waste a lot of time. Where we left off is we were talking about Target's position within American retail. And you all know I told my Target story because I worked there in high school a few times. I worked there in college a few times. And I was that person where Target was my store. I'm not a Walmart girl. I'm not even really a Costco girl, except when I'm buying in bulk, for the businesses and stuff like that, or if I'm having an event. But Target was my joint until they start cutting up recently. I used to love Target so much that I was going to write them in Minneapolis and tell them they need to give me a store. But look, all is fair in love and war, and things have changed. Look, here's Target's position within the American retail system. Target, and I want you to think of Target in comparison to its competition, whether it be Walmart or Costco has sort of kind of become, although I would consider Costco and Sam's Club competitors, but Costco has sort of become a competitor of Target. Even stores like Myers that have clothes and groceries and other items. There's a lot of retailers that are starting to kind of encroach upon that space. But Target occupies a unique position within the American retail landscape. Yesterday, we covered retail economics, and I encourage you, if you have a store or you're going into retail, whether it's online retail or brick and mortar retail, that you study retail economics. There's a lot about that in my book, The Art and Science of Business, which you can go on Amazon and get. Okay. But Target and its unique space, unlike discount retailers whose primary competitive advantage is price alone, right? That's kind of like Walmart, right? Walmart's like, look, we're gonna price out the competitors. Target, though, has historically positioned itself as a retailer that combines affordability with design, convenience, and an enhanced shopping experience. Okay. Its customer base has generally included middle income households, younger families, suburban professionals, and consumers who like the balance between value and style. That's why I like Target. Okay. For those reasons. And when I was like, damn, Target, why are you cutting up? Now I can't go. Anyway, over several decades, the company cultivated a brand identity that emphasized inclusivity, okay, modern merchandising, and community engagement. So unlike pure transactional retailers, like some of the others we mentioned, Target invested heavily in developing an emotional relationship with its consumers. Okay. Their advertising campaigns emphasize family. They had certain kind of music on the campaigns. They emphasize diversity, education, neighborhood partnerships, and social responsibility. So Target built this brand with all of these components that extended beyond the pure transaction. Okay. I did a little live clip, and some of our conversation yesterday was based upon looking at things purely beyond the traditional or the basic transaction. And Target is a masterclass in that. Okay. So this strategy proved commercially successful because consumers really increasingly viewed purchasing decisions as reflections of personal values rather than simple financial transactions. Okay. When people purchase items, there are a number of things that come into play, and it is not just purely transactional. And this is an evolution in purchasing and consumer relationships that Target, I would say, did a good job at cornering the market on. Corporations no longer are evaluated solely by the products they sell. Okay. They're evaluated by the principles that they appear to represent. Now let's talk about this DEI era. All right. Because this is really the center of the controversy. So after the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis in May of 2020, and I don't know if you guys know that Target is headquartered in Minneapolis as well. So this makes what they did in the wake of George Floyd's murder more egregious, because that happened in their corporate hometown. Okay. So following the murder, after the murder of George Floyd, May 2020, which was egregious. And I am so grateful that to this day, I have not seen it. And now I turn the television every time they get ready to see it. I remember when it was flowing across the television, my business partner then, Dr. Jeffrey Dormo, he called me. I was in Chicago, and he said, hey, what time you coming in the office? And I said, I'm about to get on the plane, heading to the airport. I land at 9. I'm coming straight in the office. He said, do not look at the television. Don't look at anything. He said, there was an egregious murder. He said, and if I can prevent that from going into your brain, because I know how empathic you are, I want to help do that. He said, don't look at no TVs in the airport. Don't look at the TV while you're getting ready. Just don't look at it. And I was like, okay. And he told me about it when I got into the office, but he said, don't look at it. But and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for that. But anyway, I digress. I had to tell that story. So in their hometown of Minneapolis, in the Target hometown of Minneapolis, George Floyd was murdered in 2020. Okay. So a lot of corporations throughout the country began to face unprecedented public pressure to address the racial inequalities, supplier diversity issues, workplace inclusion issues, and community investment issues that have been blatant for years. This didn't just pop up with the murder of George Floyd. Okay, when it came to doing business, there were these racial inequalities, supplier diversity. We talk about it on this show. I talk about it in my book that you can get on Amazon, issues about workplace inclusion and community investment. Many companies publicly announced new diversity initiatives right after the murder. Okay. Some of them went into expanded procurement commitments. A lot of them increased their charitable giving, and they pledged greater investment in Black-owned businesses. And Target was among those corporations that publicly committed substantial financial resources toward racial equity initiatives. Company leadership announced plans to increase spending with Black-owned businesses. And we were like, yes, go Target. They pledged to expand their supplier diversity. In other words, when you go into these stores, the companies that get their products on the shelves, for the most part, are not Black. Okay, I'm talking about Black. I'm being very specific about Black because we get lost in the sauce when you make it multicultural, when you make it minority, because then you see these companies going, oh, we donated to minority businesses. How much of them were Black? And then oftentimes when those organizations, those multicultural organizations, the same thing happens in the Muslim community. If they say, well, we want to combat Islamophobia and we want to give contracts and give opportunity to Muslim businesses, rarely are they Black. And everybody hides behind, but nobody comes and says, hey, Black people, it is you all who sacrificed and fought during the civil rights era, and on whose back over the past 400 years, this form of capitalism that we're all trying to knock on the door of was formed. Come on in here and get some of these supplies, get some of these contracts. It ain't happening like that. So whenever we take the word Black off of something, we get lost. And a lot of us are tempted because we see money flowing and we say, oh, we're just going to be for general diversity, minority, multicultural. You know, we have the Coalition of Black House Museums. And I know people wish we would just say, how about the Coalition of House Museums? Because it's the Black part that gets lost in the sauce when you put the multicultural thing together. So even though they're giving away minority contracts, how many went to Black people? So I'm very specific in my language about Black people. Okay. Black people. All right. Target increased their commitment. They wanted to expand supplier diversity, meaning more Black companies getting their products on the shelves. They wanted to improve their representation within leadership by adding more Black people to their leadership team. And they said that they were going to invest in underserved communities. Made complete sense after George Floyd was murdered in their corporate hometown. Okay. For many consumers, these commitments strengthens Target's reputation as a socially responsible corporation. I remember thinking that myself. But a lot of other people who ain't down with that, who don't want things to be earmarked for Black. Here's another thing that's happening. If you go to I'm going to repost the paper that we wrote with physics that talks about the number of organizations being sued just for trying to help Black people. That's a whole nother thing. We're going to do a show on that. Regardless of your political perspective, though, that period of time demonstrated an important business reality. And that business reality is that corporate values have become part of corporate branding. Conscious capitalism is real. And that period of time expressed that louder than any other time. So certain statements that were once considered public relations in the business became strategic business commitments that are subject to ongoing public evaluation. All right. So then we had this huge change in the political environment. Why is all this a part of the masterclass discussion? The reason why it's all part of the masterclass discussion, thank you so much, everybody, for joining and becoming a part. We're talking about part 2 of our conversation with about the target, George Floyd. Thank you so much for the super chat. God Cage, appreciate you. We're doing a masterclass study because we're not just responding emotionally to what Jay-Z and Target just did. We're digging into it. Why is the changing political environment and the George Floyd murder important to this case study? Because as we began to move into conscious capitalism, which is what was happening, the political environment began to change. Because a lot of people say, oh, no, we're not going to have money tied to values. Pay attention, because this is what we talk about here on the show. And if you go and grab my book on Amazon, you know this is what I talk about. Money tied to values. If you know me, I don't spend my money behind bad values. You better give me good service. You better not disrespect me, or you don't get my money. And to the extent that I can, unless there's a monopoly somewhere, then I don't do it. You see, I ain't had my nails done because I'm not going to support anybody or anything that does not support my community, especially when you're eating off my community. All right. So they didn't want that, though. They didn't want these types of conscious entrepreneurship or conscious capitalist principles to begin to permeate corporations. Because remember, corporations have influence with lobbyists, and corporations, as we've studied on this show, now have an imbalanced influence on policy. So they're like, no, we got to stop this. So the political and legal environment surrounding diversity initiatives shifted right after this. Court decisions. You heard me talking about the number of people that started these lawsuits. They've spent millions of dollars suing people just for saying the word Black. You don't believe me? I have the white paper posted on my page. I'll repost it so you all can see it. So court decisions, shareholder activism, state legislation, public criticism, changing political priorities caused many corporations to reconsider how diversity initiatives would be structured and communicated. Companies increasingly faced competing pressures from different segments of the market. One group expected corporations to maintain or expand their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's us. Another group criticized corporations for engaging in initiatives they believe extended beyond the traditional responsibilities of business. Management teams across corporate America found themselves navigating increasingly polarized expectations, and Target was caught up in the middle of it. You had companies in retail and finance and technology, higher education, healthcare, entertainment, manufacturing, all dealing with this. Okay, and the question was, how does a corporation maintain its credibility with multiple audiences whose expectations directly conflicted? Then what happened? the Jamal Bryant boycott. One of the most visible responses to Target's revised corporate direction came from Pastor Jamal Bryant, who called for a national consumer boycott of the retailer. Y'all know I'm all for redirecting Black dollars so that they last longer in our community, so that they directly benefit those of us. It is so hard out here. A lot of people, let me say this. Let me slow down and say this. A lot of us don't do anything. We don't really do anything in business. We don't really do anything big. The most we do that's conscious is maybe apply for a grant and get some money and then adopt whatever principles the grantor says we have to have, and then we spend the money accordingly. Okay, nothing wrong with that. But that's the most we've ever done. But most of us have never stood up to the powers that be to create a business that helps and benefits Black people. Because we're trying to get the free money. We're trying to go after the dollars that are being given out by certain organizations, and we don't want to say Black. We want to pretend like, oh no, I'm for everybody. But guess what? Everybody ain't for everybody, and everybody ain't for you. I know you can find some philanthropic people every once in a while here and there. I'm going to say this again. Every time we as Black people go into a situation and they say minority business initiatives, I want you to do some research and see what percentage of those minorities are Black. If they say Muslim business initiatives, I want you to do some research and go and see what percentage of those Muslims are Black. If they say an initiative from the White House or from the First Lady or whatever regarding children, I want you to go and see what percentage of the children that benefited were Black. And if you find an organization where there's a decent percent, I'm not talking about 1%, 2%. Many of these places you will go will be less than 1%. Do you all know that less than 1% of Black businesses benefited from DEI initiatives or government contracts? Less than 1%. And we around here hollering about, well, they don't want DEI. So Pastor Bryant argued that corporations benefiting from significant Black consumer spending should demonstrate measurable commitments to Black-owned businesses, supplier diversity, employment opportunities, and sustained investments in Black communities. I agree with Pastor Bryant on this issue. If you are benefiting from the community, you should give back to the community that is increasing your wealth. Okay? If I was in the hood of China and I opened up a soul food restaurant, I'm going to give back to initiatives in that hood that relate to Chinese people in that area or whatever area I'm part of. As a conscious entrepreneur, I'm not going to go and snatch the capital out of there and then say, F you, pay me to the people who live there and shop there with me. That is what's happening every day around here in America today. And many of us in business, we don't know that we're becoming predatory capitalists because we're constantly adopting these principles from the way we act. We rude and condescending. We're dogmatic, and even down to the way we structure our businesses. We want to be aligned with people that we think are going to help us get more free opportunities. You better do some studying, because 9 times out of 10, it don't happen. But guess what? If that's what you want to do, that's cool. Because there's some of us out here that are builders and developers who love our people, which have no reflection on whether or not we love anybody else. But I love Black people. When I'm working with students and I see them really trying and I see them really striving and overcoming the odds, it literally makes me emotional. But anyway, I digress. Pastor Bryant, he encouraged consumers, okay? to redirect their purchasing power towards companies who were perceived to be more closely aligned with those priorities I just mentioned. Okay. Now, you know that organized consumer influence boycotts, Montgomery boycotts, all of that have been very, very impactful. And it is a way for a marginalized community to have influence, not only with the flow of dollars or economic influence, but also policy influence. See, because you and I may not realize that the imbalance that we talked about, I talked about it in my last white paper. Go to the link in my bio. There's a link there. You can check out the ebook that I wrote on corporate's influence on policy. And these kind of little things where you shake up the algorithm, even in the face of controversy, influences policy. See, these kinds of boycotts and things like that, they introduce economic risk into corporate decision-making by increasing the perceived cost of maintaining a particular policy or course of action. See, there's an acquisition cost or a customer acquisition cost that every company evaluates. And this kind of stuff increases that customer acquisition cost. We spend a lot of money. We are the largest consumers in the world here as Black Americans, believe it or not. And so that has power. And so while the propaganda tells us we don't got nothing, we don't have nothing, you got to have the money in order to spend it. I might just be a pass-through, but guess what? If I wake up and decide to keep half of that money and redirect half of what comes through me to people that look like me and extend the life of the dollar in the community, I all of a sudden got policy power. So when you're thinking about selling out and you're looking at this like, whatever, I'm about to get some white people in my company and some white people on my board, which is nothing wrong with that. Okay. But some of y'all think that that's a strategy. That's what I'm about to do. I ain't thinking about her. I'm about to get this money. Consider that you are chipping away at our ability to impact policy. Black culture is the most significantly monetized culture on the planet. And guess what? You have more leverage when all of a sudden you're exclusive than when you decide to be inclusive for the sake of trying to just get money. See, it's all right to be inclusive as long as you keep your principles, if you can keep your principles. But if you decide I'm going to be inclusive because I want to attract some free money or I want to attract some contracts or something like that, you just diluted yourself for the wrong reason. If you become exclusive in principle, you have more value as an organization, whether it's an advocacy organization, whether it's a retail organization, whatever it is. And I'm going to tell those of you who are committed to consciousness, if you are in an organization, listen to me good, and there are differences in inclusivity and exclusivity, because some of us are simple-minded. And so we think inclusivity means we're going to just invite all these people in, but the principles of the organization don't matter. You gotta be very careful. You got to be able to make sure that those that you include in the organization will keep the principles of the organization intact. There's a thing called scope creep, and we evaluate scope creep all the time in projects. Scope creep means that all of a sudden, that organization, that company is doing what they need to do in order to get money, in order to impact stakeholders, in order to impact shareholders. Some of us believe this is what's happening with Jay-Z. And these types of strategic partners like the Target Jay-Z partnership, They may seek to create new value by strengthening brand equity. They may say, we're attracting new customers. We're going to reshape public perception. What impact, emotional impact, are you having on a movement that is trying to raise the consciousness of a people when it comes to their spending patterns? See, when you purchase something somewhere, you're making a statement. When you refuse to purchase something somewhere, you're also making a statement. I don't know if y'all thought about that. All right. Let me see if y'all got any questions, comments in the chat. I'm going to keep going. We got about 30 minutes left. If you are enjoying this conversation, give me a thumbs up, give me a star, a super chat, and let's make sure you're liked and subscribed. And I'm going to keep going. So I think what you get the gist of this is that the product or service alone is not sufficient. It's what happens behind the product or service that makes a difference. All right. Now, this part of the study, it relates to both, but I think we can think about it from a Jay-Z standpoint. And I think it's this part that people are mad about, because reputation says a lot. And I don't know how much we realize that reputation is an economic asset. I talked yesterday about balance sheets. And on the balance sheets, you have your assets and your liabilities, and they're usually your financial assets and your financial liabilities. But there's another balance sheet that we use when we go in and evaluate companies. It's that intangible. And reputation is one of those assets on the other side of the balance sheet, on the other balance sheet, that can be translated and fuel the economy on the economic or financial balance sheet. All right. So you got traditional accounting that recognizes like buildings, inventory, patents, equipment, cash reserves. But there's also, I call it a modern business strategy that recognizes other categories of assets that rarely appear directly on the financial statement. And reputation is one of them. Reputation influences your hiring decisions, which becomes economic, right? Reputation influences customer loyalty, which becomes economic. We talked about that yesterday. Reputation influences investor confidence, which becomes economic. We talked about that yesterday. Reputation influences regulatory relationships, supplier negotiations, media coverage. It directly affects your customer acquisition costs, your employee retention rates, and the ongoing concern of your brand or long-term brand equity. There's another thing on there that influences that, which is trust. Trust is a little bit more difficult to quantify, but it does have measurable economic consequences. So customers who trust a company are usually more willing to recommend that company. Okay, that's translated into dollars. Customers who trust a company are generally more willing to forgive occasional mistakes. Okay, that's an issue oftentimes with Black-owned businesses. We just don't like each other, and so as soon as somebody make a mistake, we out of there. But we'll keep going back to a company that's owned by people who don't look like us, even if they keep making mistakes. Companies who trust a company, or consumers, who trust a company generally remain loyal during economic downturns. Consumers who trust a company purchase new products introduced under the same brand. Okay. And like I mentioned, if you have a declining trust or little trust, it often increases your marketing costs because customers have to spend more money or more resources persuading consumers to return. And this happens with newly developed Black-owned businesses, because for a lot of us, especially if we come up with a new concept, we went through this a lot with the hospital, in that we had to market through education. So we had to design a marketing concept that also was education. And that meant that our patient acquisition cost was probably higher than average. Okay, so a lot of people are asking, why would Jay-Z do this? Why would Jay-Z do this? That question, not the album itself, is what has fueled all this public discussion and outrage. If this had been an exclusive release with another artist, it likely would have remained a music industry story. But because it's Jay-Z, it has turned into this masterclass. It has turned into a whole economic impact statement. So instead of it becoming a broader conversation about business, economics, race, corporate strategy, because it occurred during a period in which many Black consumers are reevaluating our relationship with Target following changes to the company's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Okay. The strategic questions extend beyond Target. Did Jay-Z pursue Target? If he did, why? Why did he use Target instead of Walmart? Costco was our friend during this time. Why did he go put his Reasonable Doubt exclusive album in Costco? Why not Amazon? Why not an independent Black-owned retail consortium? Why not go find a Black platform like the one Isaac Hayes Jr. is doing, Fanbase or something like that, and say, we're going to release here? Why not that? That would have been a novel idea. Go talk to Isaac Hayes Jr. and say, hey, I'm releasing Reasonable Doubt, an exclusive album. It's a white album. It's got extra stuff. Let's work on a partnership on your platform to drive people to your platform so that they can come on there, they can purchase it, they can listen. That would have been fantastic. And then maybe we do something special where people who become new members of Fanbase get a discount. Why not distribute the anniversary edition directly through Roc Nation or one of his other platforms? It's not the first time that Jay-Z's business decisions have generated debate within Black America. Let's talk about what happened in 2019. Okay. Jay-Z entered a partnership between Roc Nation and the NFL to advise on entertainment and social justice initiatives. And they announced this a little less than 3 years after former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick had become one of the most recognized figures in professional sports by kneeling during the national anthem to protest police brutality and racial injustice. And because Kaepernick remained unsigned by an NFL team, many people viewed the partnership as inconsistent with the spirit of his protest. Because Jay-Z seemed like he was down with Colin Kaepernick. But then some people gave Jay-Z the benefit of the doubt, and they argued that he was pursuing change through institutional engagement rather than public confrontation. And I don't think you're going to be able to say that with this one. because I don't know what became of that relationship and how it benefited the Black community. The same business decision may be viewed simultaneously by our community as pragmatic, opportunistic, visionary, controversial, depending upon the stakeholder evaluating it. It just depends on how you're looking at it. But I seen it as a slap in the face to what we are doing and what is needed to be done in this community. It's a slap in the face to our community because of the rhetoric and the marketing and the PR that is out here about our community right now. There's too much anti-Black sentiment coming from the government, coming from everywhere for this to be done at this time. And when I start to dissect the business of it, it just looks a little money grubbing to me. And some of y'all who still believe in Santa Claus and still believe in the Tooth Fairy and still believe that Jay-Z gonna come and discover you and still worship people who got money are not the builders and developers that I'm talking to, because you don't understand what we're saying here. And I don't know if there's a hidden hand or if there's just a hand, but what I do believe is that we incorrectly have assumed that we are a stakeholder in Jay-Z's organizations, and we have incorrectly assumed that of the stakeholder mix, that maybe we hold a larger percentage than what we really do. So this is where my concept that I've been introducing and talking about called follow the incentive comes into play. You know how they say follow the money? Follow the incentive. Y'all know what an incentive is, right? What did Target stand to gain from this? What is Jay-Z gaining from it? What were the alternatives? I just came up with an alternative, a couple of them. What are the risks? If I had been serving as Jay-Z's strategic advisor or as a member of Target's executive leadership team, would I have recommended this partnership under these market conditions? Would you have? I don't know. I don't know. All right. I'm going to cover this last point before we go, and then I'll ask some questions. Here's a quote from my book, The Art and Science of Business. If you haven't read it, you need to go and get it. Go to Amazon, get it, and read it. Okay. Quote, I said, the wealthiest entrepreneurs do not simply sell products. They convert one form of capital into another until ownership becomes self-sustaining. I'm going to let that sink in for a minute and let you think about that. And I'm going to come back and talk about that at another point. One of the greatest misconceptions in modern business is the belief that Jay-Z became wealthy because he sold millions of records. He did not. Music made him famous. Business made him wealthy. It's just like recently, you all know I was part of the Entrepreneur of Impact program. Were they going to let a Black Muslim woman win? I don't know. But did we get some exposure and more eyeballs on what we're doing over here? Yes, we did. And was it worth it for that? Absolutely. So music got eyeballs on him, but the business made him wealthy. And that distinction matters because fame and wealth are not synonymous. Let me say that again to you social media people who are always talking about, well, you need to get more likes and you need to get more subscriptions and you need to get more this and that. Fame and wealth are not synonymous. History is filled with entertainers, athletes, public figures who accumulated extraordinary popularity without creating lasting financial security. Public recognition alone does not produce generational wealth. Wealth is created through ownership. Wealth is created through strategic investment, pooling your resources, partnerships. Wealth is created through disciplined capital allocation and the ability to transform temporary success into enduring economic assets. So the Jay-Z business model illustrates this principle with remarkable clarity. All right. Now, while the public often associates his success with music, his entrepreneurial career demonstrates something much more significant. He has consistently converted one form of capital into another form of capital. He transformed his artistic talent into reputation. And then the reputation became influence. And then the influence became negotiating leverage. And then that leverage produced ownership opportunities. And then the ownership opportunities generated investment returns. And then those returns financed additional acquisitions and partnerships and enterprises. That's the most important thing we've said in 2 days. If you didn't hear that, you need to rewind back and say, I'm going to say that again. And let me say that again, because I don't know if I can repeat it again to you. It's called capital transformation. Again, I cover it in my book. Let me say it again. In pop culture, those of y'all sitting on the couch, just clicking, judging the world based on what you see on social media. And when I say that, I mean that's young people and old people. Black people, white people, Muslim, Christian, those that are hooked and anchored into pop culture, where pop culture has become their go-to business model. They will be the people who will associate success, in the case of Jay-Z, with his music. They don't even realize that he ain't been the number one rapper in years. See, his entrepreneurial career is the most significant aspect of who he is. He converts one form of capital into another form of capital. He took artistic talent and converted that to reputation. Okay. Then he took his reputation and leveraged that into influence, into becoming an influencer. And then as an influencer, that gave him negotiating leverage. See, when you create influence and you create reputation and you start to use that, that's a certain consistency in who you are. And then that can become negotiating leverage. And then that negotiating leverage produced ownership opportunities, because he could sit at the table and say, no, I want in. I want an equity position. I want an ownership position. And then that ownership or equity position generated returns on investments. And then those returns, that money that came in, financed more acquisitions, other partnerships, and other enterprises. It's called capital transformation. All right. Let's see. We got any questions on this? I don't think I see y'all with any questions. You should be liking and subscribing. Send me some stars, some super chats out here. Let's see what we got. Thank you all for joining. Thank you. Thank you. We got 5 minutes. Do we got time for one more concept on this, or y'all had enough and you trying to figure all this out all of a sudden? Thank you so much. Thank you, God Cage. Thank you again. Thank you for the star. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you all. Hit that super chat. Hit the star. It ain't gonna hurt you. You getting valuable information here. We breaking this thing down. I think we got time for one more concept. Can we do that in 5 minutes? Let's try to do it because I don't see any questions. I just want to talk to you about the difference between income and wealth. Okay. A lot of us in business, we focus on income and cash flow. And depending upon where we are, that's important. Okay. But as we get more mature in business, we'll focus on building assets because the income pays our expenses today. The assets generate income for tomorrow. Okay. And this is why many compensated professionals remain financially vulnerable while entrepreneurs with comparatively modest salaries accumulate substantial wealth over time. Artists are frequently compensated through royalties, performance fees, license agreements, endorsements. So as entrepreneurs, we ask a different question. What can I own? And ownership changes the mathematics of wealth. A performance generates income once. You go to the club, you go do a performance, you go do a speech. That's once. The ownership becomes income repeatedly. And Jay-Z appears to have understood this distinction very early in his entrepreneurial development. So throughout his career, he repeatedly pursued opportunities that expanded ownership rather than merely increasing compensation. So music became his foundation and not his focus, if you will. It just was his foundation. You know what? I'm going to pick up tomorrow or later today. We're going to start with, because I want to take some time on this next concept of influence and understanding influence as an asset. Remember, we talked about there's the financial assets, the buildings, the cash, all of that, the receivables, all those things that are on your on the asset side of your balance, your financial balance sheet. But then there's the other balance sheet. There's influence, there's reputation. And I want to talk a little bit about influence and what I may do. I'll let you guys know what I'm going to do. We may come back later today and I just do a live where we go into part 3. But I got about 5 more parts to this study on this Jay-Z Target partnership. And I really want us to dive into it because I want us to get away from being so emotional in business. I did a small little pop out on Instagram yesterday where I was talking to us about learning to negotiate participation in our programs and things that we're working on instead of always being like, don't nobody want to support me and they're jealous of me. And I was hitting the screen. I'm like, listen to me, everybody ain't jealous of you. Sometimes you and I have not done a good job at showing people the value of becoming a part of what it is that we're working on. Everything ain't emotional. Everything ain't about you. Calm your little self down. Sometimes you just got to do it. Like my grandmother used to say, I can show up better than I can tell them. Sometimes you got to do that, but we got to get over this thing of thinking that everything is about us. Okay. Every time the bell rings, it's not your fight. People living their life. Life is lifing. And so we have to learn how to be better negotiators and do a better job at being influencers when it comes to what it is that we claim we believe in. You start learning that, you start going to that next level and you start generating income and assets and ownership based on that thought pattern, as opposed to your rugged individual emotional thought pattern that's been ruling you for the last 10, 15 years. That's what got you where you at. I'm not dissing it. That's what got you where you at. Being a rugged individual, being emotional. I don't care what I got to do. Don't nobody like me. I got to make sure don't nobody steal from me. I don't trust nobody. That got you right here. And that's good. Now, learn to be an influencer. learn how to take those very same people that you thought or you categorized as haters, learn how to flip them and get them to help you get to that next level. You think all the people that these billionaires and multimillionaires out here doing business with are their best friends? Think they all in love with each other? If you do, you're slow, because that ain't true. You know better than that. All right, family. Listen, happy Juneteenth. Happy free-ish. Yesterday was a beautiful day. We were out there in these Juneteenth streets. Shout out to Senator Willie Preston, who had a fabulous event yesterday. It was really, really fabulous. He honored Dr. Jeremiah Wright. There were some incredible people there, lots of children everywhere. And y'all know these mascots that wear these little cartoon heads. Y'all know I don't like them. So after a while, I had to leave because there was too many of those. And I was like, why they keep coming around me? Probably because I'm attracting them, because I'm saying in my mind, please go away. But I can't stand it. I can't stand when you go to the game and you see the Benny the Bull and all of them. Oh, let me tell you a funny story before we go. We were at the Washington Wizards game, and the people I was with, they are teasing me because they know I can't stand those mascots. I can't stand the flying blimps and balloons, and I don't know. I just don't like it. And my friend Jeff, he up here saying, you better stop thinking about it. It's going to come over here and get you. And I was like, if you don't be quiet, you're going to make it come over. So they had the blimp flying around the arena at the Wizards game. And it started to go out the tunnel. And I remember breathing a sigh of relief because it kept flying over our heads. We had these beautiful floor seats, and it just kept flying above our head. And I remember as it started to fly out of the stadium, I breathed a sigh of relief. I was like, oh, good, the thing is gone. So now I turn and I'm talking, right? Do you know that thing turned around, came over by us, hovered above us, And when it hovered above us, it fell down right above us. And Jeff and this man in front of us and the man behind it, they had to literally stand up and push the blimp so it wouldn't fall on my head. That is the power of the mind. I just had to say that to y'all. Okay, so may Allah bless you. I am wishing you all more goodness than you've ever received or imagined. I pray that everything you think about, everything you want, everything you touch just becomes golden and comes to fruition. Every single thing, anything in your mind that you want to do, if God has put it in your mind as a desire, then I want to match that energy and help push you to that next level in your life. And I really, really, really pray that we begin to dissolve some of our immature emotional behaviors and move into being builders and thinkers and developers so that we can get to that next level. All right, family. I'll see you all soon. I'll tell you all when I'm going to come out and do part 3 on this. It may be today, it may be Monday, but I'll let you guys know so that you can check it out. But go and review yesterday, and I'll post some small clips so that we can check it out. All right. May Allah bless each and every one of you. And thank you so much for tuning in today. Happy Juneteenth. Remember, accept your own, be yourself. It's not personal, it's vibrational.
I have received so many pleasures, so many very good to look at, whether you own them or not. It's a pleasure just to look at such presents. Why, I have never witnessed so many presents. I think I have to build me a house for presents. This shows what Allah can do for you and me if we believe in him.
There is nothing that we could not accomplish in the name of God. You know what your problem is? You don't have even a worthy goal to strive after. I'm going to give you an assignment today. Here's an assignment. Is there something you want? Do you want something? Something that you want, but you have not been able to get it? Huh? Close your eyes. Do you see it? Whatever it is that you want, first envision it. You got the picture. Do you see it? All right, now the question is, you have to claim what you see. I claim this. I claim it. I believe with all my heart in the name of God that I'll bring what is in my imagination into reality. We're going to bring it back like it never was. I see in the dome the name Allah written in Arabic. But I can't just dream. I got to go to work. How do you bring it into concrete reality? First, without faith, you can't work the vision.